Welcome back to another episode of Even Your Dynasty Show. The San Francisco Giants today lost 4-3, blowing a 2-run lead in the ninth inning to kind of put a damper on a 4-2 road trip, which is still a good road trip. They did get themselves back up to 500, and it seems like there's always been a gravitational pull to 500 for this team for the last several years now, and they find themselves there yet again. Uh, but some takeaways from the series, because there are, as always, there's some good, there's some bad that you can take away between both the series in Pittsburgh as well as the series in New York. They were kind of the cardiac kids on this series, coming back or coming from behind 4 different times. Now, the 2 games that they actually had leads, they blew in the ninth inning. So that was kind of on one hand, it could have been a really bad road trip because of the fact that they kept coming back, having to come back to win games. But on the other hand, it could have been a really good road trip because of the fact that the only 2 games they lost, they blew in the ninth inning. So, uh, quite a few different takeaways from this series, or from this road trip. But we'll start off with some of the good. Um, from today's game specifically, Logan Webb looked excellent. He's made 2 starts on this road trip, and unfortunately, they happen to be the 2 games the Giants lost, and none of it fell on his shoulders because both the game against Pittsburgh and the game against New York, Logan Webb actually threw the ball really well. I mean, he probably was the best starting pitcher on this road trip, and he happened to be the guy that, pitched the 2 games they didn't win. Um, Also, Brett Wisely has had a really good series in New York the last 2 days, and also he had a game-winning hit over in Pittsburgh. So he was a guy that I talked about a lot on the minor league update videos. He's been doing a really good job in Sacramento, and it's good to see him carry some of that success up to San Francisco, where I mean, I think he's hitting like 380 or 400 right now. It's absurd. But he's doing a lot of what you saw in Sacramento. He hasn't started really drawing many walks yet, but I'm happy he's up there swinging. He has some sneaky power. He hit one over the fence today, and he also will just pepper line drives all over the field. And, last year he was striking out way too often. That was his big thing. And so far this year, he's limiting them to a respectable number. And don't be surprised if he gets to stick around because as much as I think the Giants could sit there and live with Marco Luciano's defense for 6 or 7 innings a game and then just use Nick Ahmed as a late inning guy, I don't think the team's going to go that way. And we're going to talk more about Marco Luciano here in a moment, but I could easily see Brett Wisely sticking around, especially as a left-handed option to spell, Tyro, Nick Ahmed eventually, and also in center field with Luis Matos. He just gives him another left-handed option. So he was another positive takeaway. Uh, the kids as a whole. Patrick Bailey had a huge go-ahead grand slam a couple nights ago. He threw a couple runners out. He's playing really well, some clutch hits, and he's obviously building off of last season and looks more like the guy that was red hot when they first called him up and just keeps swinging the bat really well. And if he swings the bat well, I mean, he's going to be one of the better catchers in baseball because we know what he can do defensively. Now, I've harped on him. I know a lot of you guys have heard me in the past. I've harped on him for being a bit lazy behind the plate at times because that's been my biggest thing. He has all the talent in the world, and I think he's probably the most talented defensive catcher in baseball. But too many pass balls, too many errors, and a lot of that is just carelessness and recklessness, and playing the position with an extreme arrogance. But he has cleaned a lot of that up, and he looks a lot more reliable back there than he has really at any point in his professional career. So good for him. I hope he keeps it up because what he's doing right now is really good to see, and he looks healthy after the concussions, which is a good sign. One of my personal favorites, Randy Rodriguez, yesterday came in, fired 2 shutout innings, looked absolutely unhittable. Had Francisco Lindor just hoping he'd throw a ball, and which can't say I've seen that very often. It has happened periodically with guys, but you when your slider is so good that you have a guy that has been one of the better players in baseball since he's been in the league. I mean, I know he's not the same guy now that he was years ago, but when you have that guy just putting the bat on his shoulder and hoping you throw a ball in a 3-2 count, I mean, give yourself a pat on the back, Randy, because that's dirty. So he's one of my favorites. I think he's a future closer. I don't know if it'll be here, uh, but I think he's going to be a closer one day. And if anything, he should be a guy at the back end of the bullpen, and he should be a guy that in a situation like today. Now, he wasn't available because he threw 2 innings yesterday, but a situation like today where Camilo Duvall is not available to close out a game, I don't think it's going to take long before Randy Rodriguez is the guy that comes into those games because his stuff is that good. And if he's throwing strikes, guys can't touch him. So he was a big bright spot in this series. Matt Chapman made possibly the greatest defensive, like walk-off defensive play I've ever seen in Major League Baseball. Obviously there's probably been better plays defensively. There's plenty of those, but as far as plays to end a game, that and situationally, that was one of the best plays I've ever seen. The play on Friday night. When you see it live, when he first made the play, it looked like a great play. Don't get me wrong, but when they did the back angle where they had the camera over in right field looking straight down, and you realize just how far back Matt Chapman was playing on that play, you're not supposed to make those plays. Like that's a play that realistically, at best, it's a tie game. And had Lamont Wade Jr., who also massive shout out to him for making an incredible pick on the back end of that play. But had he not gotten it, it's going to be a walk-off because the guy on third is going to score, or the guy that was on second base is going to come around third and score if he throws that away. So both ends of that play were just phenomenal. It was one of the best plays I've seen, especially to end a game. So he has been showing his value a ton. The bat's woken up. Jorge Soler's bat is starting to wake up a little bit. He didn't see Mania really well, but then did get a hit off Hauser today. Hit a few balls hard, had the home run on Friday. So he's been kind of coming out of the slump, and some big hits in Pittsburgh as well. Some of the kids are still swinging it okay. Elliot Ramos struggled for much of the series, but I want to give him a shout out because then you look at the numbers, they don't back it up. Like if you just look at, he clearly wasn't seeing the ball well in New York. He had a decent series in Pittsburgh. He started to cool off a little bit. He wasn't seeing the ball well in New York. He was 0 for 6 coming in into today's game. And then he went 1 for 3 with a walk. But most importantly, you see him have a 1 for 9 series with a double. And you'd think, oh, he's hitting the wall. But he also drew 3 walks. And if you watch the at-bats, even some of the strikeouts and stuff like that, he's working deep counts. Like he was seeing 10 pitches off Mania one at bat, the one where he got the double. He saw, I think, 7 or 8 another at bat. Yesterday, he was working counts. I mean, he's not going up there and just hacking first pitch and getting out. So the quality of his at bats are really good. His chase rates are still, his chase rate is improving, which is good. His walk rate is improving. If you actually go on his Baseball Savant page, he's not qualified yet to where they have like the actual percentile, but you can actually see he's greater than 50th percentile now on both chase and walk rate. His main thing is he's very low end on, whiff percentage and strikeouts. So it comes down to pitch recognition sometimes, things like that, but still a lot of swing and miss, but he's making pretty good swing decisions as a whole. And when he hits the ball, like the batted ball metrics are still exceptional. So a lot of positives, even with a, air quotes, rough series. Camilo Duvall made it a bit interesting on Friday, but as a whole, like he had a good game yesterday. Now I'm going to get to Bob Melvin as well on this talk, but so, I mean, those were the big positives for me in this series. Lamont Wade, actually, I should give him a shout out. He had another big series. And, Jordan Hicks got grinded through 5 innings. He had a good start. So there were definitely quite a few positives. Now, we're going to talk about the negatives. First, I mean, we've got to talk about Marco Luciano's defense. It was pretty brutal to watch, especially in the 9th innings of games. I will stand by the fact that yesterday's error, I would give like 95% of the blame to Tyro Estrada on that play. He played that ball too far back. By playing it too far back, it made the play at second close when it shouldn't have been. If he would have charged it, he can just take it himself and step on second. It forced him to rush the play, and he threw a very hot toss to second base where he flipped it super fast. The ball was moving really quick, and he was only like 5 feet away from Marco Luciano. If that throw isn't perfect, if Marco Luciano has to move his glove at all, it's not like we're talking about, hey, this guy gets to watch the ball in his glove and he should catch it. Like he's just reacting and throwing his glove towards where the toss went and hoping at that point. And that was just, to me, like that is a veteran that made a terrible read on that play and put Marco in an awful spot. So that specific play, I don't put on Marco Luciano. Now, he's kicked like 4 balls other than that were just you can't do. And I personally, this is an issue more with how the Giants have handled his development than anything. It's been out there that he shouldn't be at shortstop for what 6 years now. I mean, it's since they signed him, the questions were out there on whether or not he could stay at short. So what is this team doing? Not trying to, teach him other positions years ago. I mean, this is something that this last offseason, I get they were like, go get healthy, go get swing in the bat, go to winter league, whatever. He should have been taking reps at left field, first base, whatever, any of these spots last season. And now he's only a shortstop. And, the reality is you made your bed, like you're going to have to lay in it. And his bat is showing enough that, in my opinion, the priority should be on developing his bat at the major league level. I'm at the point where I don't really care if he kicks 20, 30 balls at the major league level. Like, they need to work on his bat at the major league level because his bat can be special. And it's unfortunate they don't have the DH position available for him. When you go out and get a guy like Jorge Soler, like you're going to have to play that guy. But this is what it is. And I know a lot of people, we all want to win. We all want to see this team be a playoff team, but you know what? We don't get to be picky and choosy about which mistakes we're going to tolerate, in my opinion. Like these veterans are making mistakes all the time. The veterans don't play a clean brand of baseball all the time. The veterans had this team at 16-21 before Elliot Ramos kind of was the first player when the dam finally broke to get called up. And since then, they're 11-6. So why don't we roll with the kids that are bringing this team back from the dead and let those guys make the mistakes at the major league level? That's where I'm at. And that it shows how valuable Nick Ahmed could be as a late inning guy. I mean, bring him in the 7th, 8th, whatever inning, and let him play the last few innings of a tight game when you want to value the defense more. But you should be trying to get Marco Luciano at least three at bats a game every day. But as I said earlier, I don't think they're going to end up going that route. I think, especially if Brett Wisely is swinging the bat well, they're going to stick with Wisely. But I mean, I'm at the point of stop messing around with Luciano. Either figure out where he's going to play and move him to a different position. Maybe you move him over to first base, which I get it. Like Lamont Wade Jr. is probably going to be an all-star. But if this team's not a winning team and this team's not ready to like take the next step and you believe in Marco Luciano's bat, I would trade Lamont Wade Jr. in a heartbeat because this is going to be the most valuable he's ever going to be. He's 30 years old. He's got one more year of arbitration, and then he's going to be due for a big extension. And frankly, if you don't think you're you're a team that's like ready to be a contender, I'd move him. Or you start playing him in the outfield or different spots and find a way to get Luciano at bats and play him at first. I mean, figure it out is where they're at. So either figure out where you're going to play him or make a deal and trade him somewhere, because you can't just keep his bat down forever because you failed to develop him at any position and make him a major league caliber defender at a position. And it was clear it's not short. So to me, that is a big, gigantic failure on Farhan Zaidi and the Giants development team. So that's my opinion on that one. Moving on from him, the other negative, it would be easy to point the finger at Tyler Rogers. I don't like Tyler Rogers in the 9th inning. I don't like having a guy that's that can't get a much straight. He's not a big swing and miss. He's a pitch to contact type guy. He throws between 75 and 82 miles per hour. And in the 9th inning, when guys are going to try and give you their best at bat, and they're going to try and make sure they put the ball in play, I don't like having a guy that can't really generate swing and miss. And, I see excuses out there all the time where it's like, oh, yeah, you got unlucky. The guy hit a 14 hopper through the hole, or he hit a end of the bat wounded duck into the outfield. Well, when it happens every time he pitches, like, can we stop calling it unlucky and just accept the fact that when major league hitters are able to put the ball in play consistently off a guy, stuff like that is going to happen? Like, I get it. It's not it's not sexy. It's not a 108-mile-an-hour line drive into the gap, and it's a 72-mile-an-hour exit velocity, end of the bat duck that goes 200 feet into the outfield. But guess what? A hit's a hit. It's a line drive in the box score, and he is constantly working around a ton of base runners. He has been walking guys way more frequently than he has in the past. He hit, he hit Jeff McNeil today when he had 2 strikes on him. Can't do that when you have runners on first and second, 1 out. You're trying to get a ground ball, and he throws a slider up and in. That now, did McNeil lean into it a little bit? Probably, but you can't sit there and hope the umpires are going to call that. It is what it is. So I don't like using him in the ninth. He's better suited in sixth, seventh, maybe the eighth. He's had a good history in the eighth, but I personally I like Ryan Walker and more in the eighth. I like Randy Rodriguez even, who's made all of like 6 appearances in the major leagues. And I already think he's a better reliever than Tyler Rogers at this point. His stuff is disgusting, and he looks like he's going to be a closer. So get Rogers the hell out of the ninth inning. I think I saw a stat today that he's had 39 save opportunities, and he's blown 20 of them. So he's blown over 50% of the time. So, it's not me being, hindsight's 2020 or revisionist history on this or whatever. It's not me just sitting here trying to say, oh, just because he blew it. Like, no, I don't have confidence in him ever in the ninth. That's not to say he's not going to occasionally get the job done, but I don't have confidence in him, and he does not belong there. Now, this brings me to Bob Melvin, where he has now mismanaged 2 games in the ninth inning. Both games they lost in the ninth inning. You put in Luke Jackson, who's been easily your worst reliever this season in Pittsburgh. And lo and behold, he didn't fully cough it up because they went to Doval. But rather than even just having Doval, and it's going to be funny because it's going to be kind of counterproductive on these, but rather than just going to Doval with a clean inning or going to a Randy Rodriguez who had already loosened up in that game with the big lead, rather than go to Randy in that situation where they had a 4-run lead, he goes to Luke Jackson, who immediately coughs up a couple base runners, and you put Doval into a high stress situation where it's pretty known that Doval does not like entering games without a clean inning. Like, he's not always particularly good in those situations. So we had that situation yesterday or today, and actually it's going to go back to yesterday. I hear the excuse that, well, Doval had warmed up. It does. The stress on pitchers is when they enter the game and they're throwing stress pitches, not when they're throwing in the bullpen. Regardless of if he had loosened up yesterday, he would have been available today if they wanted to use him today. But here we go, using Camilo Doval in a game they were up 5 runs. Why do you not have 2 pitchers warming up in that inning? You just signed Drew Pomeranz. What better time to use Drew Pomeranz when you have a 5-run lead? So it's just, and because of that, Camilo Doval is not available today, and we get Tyler Rogers in the ninth inning. So his decisions yesterday led to a loss today, quite frankly. So Melvin's made quite a few moves like this. I'm not a fan of a lot of the way he's handled the bullpen so far. Unfortunately, some of that I will say is not necessarily to his fault, where he is riding with the guys that have been successful, the veterans that have been successful. And I think you're finally starting to see him go away from some of those guys. Luke Jackson is getting less looks in leverage situations. Now, they had to use him yesterday, and thank God he got the job done, but you're seeing less of him in those situations. You're seeing more of guys like Randy Rodriguez in those situations, where I think Bob Melvin's figuring out pretty quickly that, guys like Randy Rodriguez and Ryan Walker, they are a better bet to get the job done, and he's going to those guys. So it's going to take some time. I think eventually guys are going to have more clear-cut, carved-out roles, and we're going to see the bullpen do a little better. But I do think this team really needs one more late inning guy, and probably a guy that can handle, or a left-hander that can be a late inning guy, because I'm sorry, Taylor Rogers is not it right now and hasn't been it all season. And Eric Miller he needs development. I mean, I'm not saying like send him down. I like Eric Miller. I think he can be really good. He's just not there yet. So you can't count on those guys. So who that guy is that they can go get, I'm not sure. I don't know who's going to be available, but I think that's something they're going to have to seriously look into um, going forward. So those were kind of the bad takeaways. Now, where the Giants kind of stand going forward, like I said, they're 11-6 on their last 17 games since the kids started to come up. You have some veterans that are going to come back. You're going to have a lot of interesting decisions to make there. I'm not going to start bagging on Farhan for decisions he has not made yet, but you all know where I stand in regards to who should stay up, and it's pretty much the kids should stay up, and you should figure out the rest of the roster. So, beyond that, they have a tough homestand coming up. They've got New York and Philadelphia coming up, and then right after that, they have to go to Arizona and Texas, and then they come home for Houston and the Angels. So until the Angels game there, you have a 15-game stretch. That is going to be a really tough and telling stretch. The kids have shown they can compete since they've been up. They've shown they can compete. This team has played well, but it hasn't been great teams. That stretch, yes, they had to play the Dodgers, but they had to play the Reds, who were reeling at the time. They had the Rockies, were 5 of those games in that 17-game stretch that I was counting because Ramos got called up the second day of the series in Colorado. And you got to play Pittsburgh and the Mets, who are both not great teams. So yes, they're beating up on bad teams, but that's what you're supposed to do. You can only handle the teams that are in front of you. So they're going to have a tough stretch coming up. If they can get at least 3-3 on this homestand, I'd feel pretty good about it. I know I don't like sitting here going, oh, just play 500 ball, but you look at the Phillies and the Yankees records, and yeah, 500 would feel pretty good. If they can go 4-2 in that homestand, we might be talking about this team in a very positive light. But that's kind of where I'm at. You need to start showing that you can compete with these good teams, because the Giants just flat out have not competed even against good teams. When they've been playing good teams, they've gotten bowled right over. So need to start winning some of these games. Hopefully they can start winning some of these games, and we'll have some good things to talk about. Last but not least, we are at like 495 subscribers. So if you're not already and you enjoy the content, smash that subscribe button, smash the like button. I said at 500 we're going to try and do a live show. Well, we're going to do a live show, I think, on Thursday either way, whether we hit 500 or not. Dan and I are really excited to do it. We want to get going on these live shows, so I think we're going to try and do that on Thursday. This week it'll probably be at like 2:00, 2:15, 2:30, somewhere in that range. We'll hop in. But we're looking forward to interacting with everyone doing that. You guys can also catch me on NorCal Sports Network on Wednesday, as I do every week. And then I'm going to try and get the minor league video out probably like Tuesday morning is my goal, to get that posted then. So other than that, that's all I've got for today. Hope everyone had a great weekend. Hope you all have a good holiday tomorrow with Memorial Day. Stay safe. And other than that, have a good one. Go Giants.